had previously governed Greek warfare and breaking through the thin line that separates civilization from savagery. Anger, frustration, and the desire for vengeance increased as the fighting dragged on, resulting in a progression of atrocities that included maiming and killing captured opponents, throwing them into pits to die of thirst, starvation, and exposure, and hurling them into the sea to drown. Bands of marauders murdered innocent children. Entire cities were destroyed, their men killed, their women and children sold as slaves. On the island of Corcyra, now called Corfu, the victorious faction in a civil war brought on by the larger struggle butchered their fellow citizens for a full week. Sons were killed by their father, and suppliants dragged from the altar or slain upon it. As the violence spread, it brought a collapse in the habits, institutions, beliefs, and restraints that are the foundations of civilized life. The meanings of words changed to suit the bellicosity. Reckless audacity came to be considered the courage of a loyal ally. Prudent hesitation, specious cowardice. Moderation was held to be a cloak for unmanliness. Religion lost its restraining power, but the use of fair phrases to arrive at guilty ends was in high reputation. Truth and honor disappeared, and society became divided into camps in which no man trusted his fellow. Such was the conflict that inspired Thucydides' mordant observations on the character of war as a savage schoolmaster that brings the characters of most people down to the level of their current circumstances. Although the Peloponnesian War ended more than 2,400 years ago, it has continued to fascinate readers of every subsequent age. Writers have used it to illuminate the First World War, most frequently to help explain its causes, but its greatest influence as an analytical tool may have come during the Cold War, which dominated the second half of the 20th century and which likewise witnessed a world divided into two great power blocks, each under a powerful leader. Generals, diplomats, statesmen, and scholars alike have compared the conditions that led to the Greek War with the rivalry between NATO and the Warsaw Pact. But the story of what actually took place 2.5 millennia in the past, and its deeper meaning are ultimately not easy to grasp. By far the most important source of our knowledge is the history written by the war's contemporary and participant, Thucydides. His work is justly admired as a masterpiece of historical writing and hailed for its wisdom about the nature of war, international relations, and mass psychology. It has also come to be regarded as a foundation stone of historical method and political philosophy. It is not, however, completely satisfactory as a chronicle of the war and all that the war can teach us. Its most obvious shortcoming is that it is incomplete, stopping in mid-sentence, 7 years before the war's end. For an account of the final part of the conflict, we must rely on writers of much less talent and with little or no direct knowledge of events. At the very least, a modern treatment of accessible scope is needed to make sense of the conclusion of the war. But even the period treated by Thucydides requires illumination if the modern reader is to have the fullest understanding of its military, political, and social complexities. The works of other ancient writers and contemporary inscriptions discovered and studied in the last 2 centuries have filled gaps and have sometimes raised questions about the story as Thucydides tells it. Finally, any satisfactory history of the war also demands a critical look at Thucydides himself. His was an extraordinary and original mind, and more than any other historian in antiquity, he placed the highest value on accuracy and objectivity. We must not forget, however, that he was also a human being, with human emotions and foibles. In the original Greek, his style is often very compressed and difficult to understand, so that any translation is by necessity an interpretation. The very fact that he was a participant in the events, moreover,